Good evening and welcome to the February 25th Maplewood City Council meeting. Kind of a special night tonight. Maplewood experienced an unusual election year in 2018 that carried over into 2019. And it really was a sign that we are moving in the right direction. One of our sitting council members was elected to the legislature, and the new governor tapped our recently re-elected mayor to lead the Metropolitan Council. After an open appointment process that produced more than a dozen excellent candidates, we're back up to full strength, with two new council members that have a wealth of experience in areas critical for our future. Economic development, especially as it related to healthcare and diversity outreach. I want to personally welcome Councilmember Bill Knudsen and Councilmember Sylvia Neblett to our council. The election process was just another example of how our city can come together and overcome challenges. Tonight we have an interesting agenda, and I just want to remind my council members that if you really looked at it, it's really cold outside and we're expecting our next snowstorm, but spring can be found in our council packets. And I want to draw your attention to several notes. As I was reading the council packet this weekend and the wind was whipping around and blowing, we announced, well, it's in our council packet, that our first ever tree sale, our city tree sale, is scheduled. Trees will be going on sale March 18th. And you can pick up trees, some select varieties, either on May 18th or May 20th. So there's one sign of spring. Tonight we have on our agenda two different road projects. We've got a public hearing on Ferndale Ivy on that project, and we're also reviewing the Mayland Crestview Forest Area Street project. So, you know, while it may be howling outside, we're talking about street projects, and we'll soon be going into road construction. And finally, we know that it's spring, that it's just around the corner, because tonight the council is being asked to approve a request for charitable gambling, no less for a ham bingo that is going to be happening April 13th, surely a sign of spring, and also a spring festival on May 4th. At the Church of the Blessed Virgin Mary. So spring is coming, folks. It may not look like it, but if you really look, we're going to be talking about some springtime things tonight. So with that, can we all stand and say the Pledge of Allegiance, please? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Amen. Thank you. City Clerk Sint, would you please do the...
Councilmember Neblett. Here. Councilmember Smith.
Here.
Councilmember Knudsen. Here. Councilmember Juniman.
Here.
Mayor Abrams.
Here. Thank you. Approval of the agenda.
I move approval. Second.
Moved by Juniman, seconded by Smith. Approval of the agenda. Any discussion? Councilmember Smith.
Mayor, I'd like to add a council presentation, please, on the Gold Line Bus Rapid Transit.
Okay. Councilmember Juniman.
Question, can we get an agenda? This is it?
Councilmember Juniman.
These are two sort of weather-related PSAs. One has to do with fire hydrants, and the other one has to do with trash cans.
Okay, that will be added as well. And I'd like to add, under council presentations, important mail. Any other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. Okay, let's take a look. The first item is approval of the February 11th City Council Workshop minutes.
I move approval.
Moved by Juniman,
Second.
seconded by Smith. Approval of the February 11th, 2019 City Council Workshop minutes. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Ayes have it.
Move approval of February 11th, 2019 City Council meeting minutes.
So moved. Second.
Moved by Smith, approval of the February 11th, 2019 City Council meeting minutes, seconded by Councilmember Neblett. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
A question, point of order, Mayor. Can the two new people vote on the workshop minutes? They weren't sworn in yet.
No.
Sorry.
So, City Attorney,
Well, okay.
Abstentions.
You heard two abstentions? Okay,
do we agree that those two will abstain? Thank you for catching that.
thanks.
Okay, then moving on to appointments and presentations, administrative presentations. City Manager Coleman.
Thank you, Mayor Abrams. The council calendar is just an opportunity for me to alert the council to upcoming items on our next meetings, and also some of the things that that we're working on as requests from the council, areas of interest or concern. So on March 11th, our next meeting in 2 weeks, we have a workshop. We're going to hear about the update on our Nature Center strategic plan. And we're going to have a presentation for our new council members, but a refresher for everyone else on conducting city business and public meetings, some of the rules that apply to council conduct and how they behave, and some of the state statutes that govern how we work together. And we are also going to have some commission interviews for our openings on our various boards and commissions. On March 25th, we're going to hear from Public Safety, their strategic plan, and the continuation of commissioner interviews. We have quite a few seats open and a large amount of people who are interested in serving, so that's very encouraging. At the council meeting on March 25th, we're going to get an update from our municipal attorney, Ron Beatty. On April 8th, at our workshop, we're going to hear about the Census 2020 process and how important it is for communities to be involved in counting our citizens. We are also going to have District 622 Superintendent Osario here at our workshop, and we will also be talking about pet licensing. At our council meeting on April 8th, we'll be hearing from our prosecuting attorney, Joe Kelly. I also wanted to point out that on March 4th, city staff will be conducting a council orientation for our two new council members. That will be March 14th from 1:30 to 4:30 in the afternoon. And the mayor has asked to come to give a little bit of an intro and background for our new members, and so there will be a possible quorum at that event. And then before you, council members, I handed out a survey which pertains to our retreat that we have every year, and we're looking at trying to get that scheduled for the month of April. And Lois has put a calendar out in front of you, and she wants you to circle the weekdays you are available and get that back to her by next Monday. And if it's easier for you to just email us the dates that work for you, we can certainly figure that out for you. But that's just to let you know. That day, it's usually about an 8 to 3:30 kind of day, so you will need to kind of pencil yourself out for a full day. With regard to some of the things we're working on, we have postponed the council meeting on Tobacco 21, although now that we're back to full speed, we'll look at getting that scheduled soon. The tree program is set, and there's some additional information on that on this report. We are going to have District 622 at some point come and talk about some of the district facility changes that they're working on. The Engineering and Public Works Department is looking at a pedestrian safety plan. That study is underway. The sign removal on vacant buildings is in process. We hope to report back to you in March on that. The new on-street parking ordinance and the new excess calls for service ordinance, we've been asked to give you a follow-up report. Those just went into effect in January this year, and the council is looking for kind of a status of how are those two new ordinances working out in the community. And as I mentioned, pet licenses is scheduled for April 8th. Upcoming community events, there is a rental licensing community meeting. The city is considering the licensing of all of our rental units in Maplewood. That meeting is scheduled for March 5th from 2 to 4 p.m. at the Gladstone Fire Station. This is the second of 2 meetings. There will also be some other discussions with council coming up in the coming months here. And the city tree sale, our first ever big tree sale, is going to be open on March 18th. And we will be starting to publicize that in our Maplewood Living and on the webpage. Trees, we will have the tree sale order closing in May, and then delivery of trees on May 18th is the pickup day, with an alternate evening of May 20th to come in for the evening if people can't make that day. So, Mayor, now is the time, if there's any issues or areas of concern you'd like staff to spend some time on, we would be happy to take that right now.
Councilmember Smith.
Thank you, Mayor. Couple quick things. One, April 8th, I am going to be traveling on business for that meeting. I'm wondering if maybe we could postpone the pet licenses
Sure.
discussion, if that's okay. We have a pretty full workshop that day anyway. And then the other thing was brought up to me by some folks on the one of our commissions to see, and I don't know if we have time or the bandwidth to do it for this time around, but to think through a little bit of how we interview commissioners. It's a pretty intimidating process today to come up and stand at the podium, and I think particularly intimidating maybe for some folks who've never done this kind of service before and whatnot. And I think to maybe start to get to creative, is there maybe some other ways we could think about doing it? Could we do a preliminary rounds, or could we just set up a table for those interviews and at least sit with them, or something like that, just to make it a little more comfortable than sort of standing at the lectern in front of the dais is, I think for some folks, a little scary, and I would hate for that to be what keeps people from serving. So, like I said, I know we've got these interviews coming up pretty quickly, so I kind of throw it out the council to see if anybody thinks that might be worth looking at, or if I'm nuts, that's fine too.
Is that a debate?
What's that?
Are we having that debate?
It'll be a short debate, I think, because I'll probably agree with you all that I am nuts, but, I thought it was a good point, so.
Councilmember Neblett.
Thank you, Mayor. Councilmember Smith, I don't think you're nuts. I think it's a great idea. I think it is intimidating sometimes to just come and stand at the lectern and just talk, when really the whole idea of getting people to volunteer is not just because they can stand at the lectern and talk. So if we could look at other ways to interview, I think it would be a great idea.
Any other thoughts from anyone?
You would have to remain transparent and within the bounds of open meeting laws and all those kinds of things. Like I want to change a process so it's not that. But I think, and like I said, I think this is something we should take some time and think about to see, first of all, if it is something we want to do. And if so, I don't have any solutions right now. So, yeah, I think it's something to consider.
Let me just comment. I certainly don't want there to be any barriers to anyone who may want to serve on a commission. On the other hand, if you're on a commission, you actually sit up at the dais, and you're actually recorded, and you have to speak in public. And so on the one hand, I don't want to change that part of how commissions meetings are actually run. I think that this maybe requires some additional information and some thought. I don't think we can work this out for the next round because they're coming too quickly.
I don't either.
But it's certainly being able to sit up here at the dais and use a microphone and speak is part of what they're applying for. So I'm a little perplexed as to how we might remove any kind of barrier. I don't know, but we can certainly think about that. City Manager Coleman.
Mayor, thank you. I think there's a couple of things we could maybe do. Number one I'm going to be visiting all the commissions in the next 2 months, and maybe that's a conversation I could have with them to get some input about how they would like to see that process work, or if they could give us some ideas about what they didn't like about the process, or the other thing is we could contact a few other cities and see how they do it.
I think that's a good idea.
Those are good ideas to collect the information and see if there is something that we can do. If there is, in fact, if there is a barrier, and if there is, what are some alternatives?
Sure.
Great idea. Okay.
That's great. Thank you.
And so I take it we will add that to
Yep, I'll add
the.
it to the list.
Okay. Anything else we want to talk about in terms of the council calendar update? Okay, then, moving on in our agenda, we have the 2018 Community Development Department Annual Report.
Oh,
Pardon me?
we didn't do the council presentations.
Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you very much.
Get us out
Council
of the way.
presentations. I'm sorry. Thank you for reminding me of that. Okay, council presentations. Councilmember Juniman, you wanted to...
I think Smith was
Oh,
first.
I'm sorry, Councilmember Smith. A little out of my rhythm here.
That's okay. Thank you, Mayor.
Councilmember Smith. Talk about the gold line.
I wanted to report back to the council on the recent Gold Line Corridor Management Committee meeting. The reason. Okay. This is the recent Gold Line Corridor Management Committee meeting for the Gold Line Transit Line. And at this meeting, we were going over some new developments to the project. As you know, this is a project that runs from downtown St. Paul to Woodbury along I-94, and it's a bus rapid transit separated guideway program. Currently budgeted at about $420 million for the project, so it's a big project. But there have been, as design has progressed, there were several key things, largely around some right-of-way issues, but mostly around pedestrian access and pedestrian safety. And there were three critical parts that were identified where there were deficiencies in the design, as we saw it, that would have to be additional, funded additionally to the project. So the Corridor Management Committee approved actually all of the recommended additions from the project, three of which are really critical for us in Maplewood. One is a pedestrian sidewalk attached to the bridge that will go over McKnight, so that will link 3M to the Sunray area. A pedestrian walkway along the Century Avenue Bridge going from 3M over to Landfall. And then also pedestrian access under the Century Avenue Bridge along the road at grade. So very excited that all three of those were included. The other thing of note for this region is they also included rebuilding and updating the 4th Street Bridge into Oakdale, which right now is like a deer path practically going over. So that bridge will be widened to make room for pedestrian space as well as for the buses, and also improve the traffic on each landing of the bridge. So, you know, all of these were about almost $28 million worth of projects, but the Corridor Management Committee really felt strongly that, you know, if we're going to be spending this kind of money, we should do it right, make sure that people can safely walk to and from the stations from different parts of the city. So it was a great conversation, and special thanks to Mr. Love for prepping me for the meeting to make sure that I came in with all the right information to help make sure we were able to bring home to Maplewood what we deserve in this project. So, but it was really a great discussion. So very excited about this project. It's, I think, going to really change the face of the east side.
Excellent report, thank you very much. And I like hearing about the connectivity with the residents. If you can't get people to the stations, it's...
Absolutely, and
Yeah.
you know, the plans they have for Sunray down the road, the vision they have for that Sunray area of mixed-use development there, and restaurants and retail and residential, if we're not connecting that to the 3M campus, it seems like a huge miss. So, and to be able to walk there for lunch and whatnot, because right now you don't have a lot of options for lunch out of there. So, so yeah, it's exciting.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Councilmember Juniman.
On the more mundane side of life, as I did last time, I will remind residents after this lovely weather we're having, the mayor may think spring is coming. I'm thinking she's a little jumping the gun. But for the moment anyway, if you are lucky enough to have a fire hydrant in your yard, would you please be so kind as to shovel it out? As you know, when the snowplow goes by, tall. You wouldn't want to have to hop off the fire truck at 2 o'clock in the morning to fight your way to the hydrant, I don't think. So please do that, or if you have a neighbor who you know can't do it, could you be so kind as to offer to do it for them? It's for everybody's safety. And along the same vein, trash cans, since we were talking trash earlier this evening, I know how it is by your driveways, also the tall banks, but please do not put your trash and recycling cans in the street. If it snows and the snowplow comes at 5 o'clock in the morning when it's dark, you will cease to own a trash can and a recycling can, and you'll have splinters in the street. So please put it just inside the mouth of your driveway. The truck will come up and see them, but the snowplow isn't probably going to be on the prowl looking for your trash can. Thanks.
Another point on that, I noticed something with the snow in my neighborhood, because we have joint mailboxes. There must be 12 mailboxes in one. And if you are not getting your mail, the reason you're not is because you have not shoveled out sufficiently. This is the first year that I can remember where the snowbanks are so high that the postal trucks can't drive right up to those big mailboxes and use them. And so you may not be getting your mail. I know we didn't get mail for several days last week, and that was the reason. So also, please shovel out your mailboxes.
Well, that's true even with your single mailbox. Yes, you're right. Thank
Okay.
you.
Exactly.
All right. Important mail. I had something I wanted to add. I got some very important mail, and I wanted to share it with my fellow council members. I received some amazing letters from third grade students. Unfortunately, I don't know which class they're in. They're called 3J. That's their class. They didn't exactly identify who their teacher was, from Edgerton School. They were studying government in the U.S. And I received correspondence from Miles, Ibrahim, Alexa, Sophia, Lamia, Piper, Bjorn, Josh, Lar, Nicholas, Aiden, and Kenya. And they had to write letters, and they actually sent them in envelopes, and they were all addressed. And they tell me that our class has been studying the people and departments in local government. I've learned about 2 important responsibilities of your office. They are, and it's amazing, a number of them say, council members, the two most important responsibilities of our office are to make laws and be in charge of the city money. I thought that was very good. They also had a chance to express their concerns, and I have to say that they were really quite remarkable. They talked about the greenhouse effect and pollution, and the value of carpooling. That probably should have been addressed to Councilmember Juniman. They also talked about homeless shelters, and with the cold weather, needing shelters for homeless people. They talked about fires, and Mr. Love, they talked about water pipes in streets. That's an important thing that the city does. And they talked about safe sidewalks to school. They didn't have a path along Edgerton, and they thought that that would be a good idea.
Hope the county's listening.
Anyway, they were really quite delightful letters, and I thought I would pass them along so that you could take a look at them. And I have communicated with them and thanked them for their civic lesson in learning about government and then actually writing a letter. So I'll pass these down, and you can take a look at those. They're really quite charming. Okay, with that, we are done with council presentations, and now we are moving on to 2018 Community Development Department, the annual report. City Manager Coleman, I'm going to ask you to lead off on that, please.
Okay, thank you. The city ordinance requires every year that the Community Development Department staff, board, and commission submit an annual report to the City Council outlining the past year's efforts. This year, each of the 4 community development staff, board, and commissions will present the Community Development Annual Report. this evening. Including with your packet is a separate printed book containing the 2018 Community Development Annual Report, and it is also available on our webpage. And it is an amazing document. I think that the staff did a very good job of representing the work that has been done in the past year, and I commend them for the wonderful report that they've written. It has a lot of information. And with that, Mayor, I would ask that you call, I think, on Bill Kempe. Is he going to give the report this evening? Or are they all taking turns? Okay.
Mayor
So,
and Council,
yeah.
we have a representative from each of the 4 commissions, so the Community Design Review Board, Environmental Natural Resource Commission, the Housing and Economic Development Commission, and finally the Planning Commission all have representatives here tonight.
Great.
Thank you, Mr. Martin. Mr. Kempe, do you want to join us, please, at the microphone? Welcome to our meeting tonight.
Thank you. So I'm going to keep this brief because everyone's in favor of that. So a couple things is that this year we approved of 76,000 square feet of improved space, including some commercial ventures such as the new Panera, which I think is open or will soon be open. There's going to be a new Mercedes-Benz dealership adjacent to the current one. And then also we have the Trails Edge Apartments. We've led the design development of the new improvements at Wakefield Park. Looking forward to seeing that open up. And then the other thing is that this year or at least currently, we have full membership. There are 5 openings or 5 positions on the Community Design Review Board, and all 5 are filled. And I believe that we've never had to cancel a meeting due to lack of quorum, which is kind of remarkable considering that everyone's volunteering. So that's all I have to say.
Thank you, Mr. Kempe. I want to thank you for your service and for the CDRB boards, or the commission's service. I cannot tell you how important the work is that you do in terms of advising us. Does any council member have anything that they want to say to Mr. Kempe? Councilmember Juniman.
Thank you. Bill probably remembers this from times past, but I second what she said. Many cities don't have such a board as yours, and I got to say it shows. When we have some new development go in, you people really help with making it look like it belongs here and making sure that it's of the best quality possible, and we really appreciate that. And it's not just an offshoot of a planning commission job, as you know, having both jobs. They are distinct. And we really appreciate the talent and the time that the people on the Community Design Review Board spend. It's very, very important. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
All right.
Next, we have the ENR Commission, Environmental and Natural Resources. Mr. Redmond.
Mayor, members of the council, I'm Ted Redmond. I'm vice chair of the ENR as well as acting chair right now. We vote tomorrow for a new chair and vice chair. I wanted to give you a few updates on 2018, some of the things that we've accomplished, as well as looking forward. 2018, one of the major accomplishments was completing the urban agriculture ordinance amendments, including community and market gardens, as well as chicken and poultry updates. We now have 42 active chicken and poultry licenses in the city, totaling over 300 birds. Kind of amazing. We also reviewed and completed a citywide tree canopy, heat island, and carbon sequestration study that has a number of potential actions for the city to pursue, so I'm sure that'll be coming up in our this year. We also completed the re-energized Maplewood energy efficiency and renewable energy program. It had a number of fun aspects. One, we had the Battle of the Parks, which was a competition between Rolling Hills Estates and Beaver Lakes Estates for energy efficiency. Rolling Hills edged them out just a bit. We also conducted, that study also conducted solar PV assessments for 98 homes and 40 businesses and congregations. And as an aside, the total solar potential identified through that study surpasses the first goal that the city has established in the comp plan, the 2040 comp plan. So you may recall we have a long-term goal and a couple interim goals. So this is more than enough to meet our first interim goal. So all we have to do is now just look for ways of implementing or helping to encourage folks to implement that potential.
Excellent.
So looking forward to 2019, one of the first things we're going to be voting tomorrow night on exactly what our goals are, but I'm certain these three things are going to be in there. The first is completion of renewable energy ordinance amendments. We're essentially done with those right now, and we're going to be wrapping those up in the coming months, and it'll be coming forward to you shortly, I'm sure. We're also working on the community food assessment, which is one of the goals in the 2040 comp plan. That'll be happening through 2019. And then lastly, I'll note climate adaptation plan. We have received a grant from the MPCA for climate adaptation. And so I'll just take a moment and note that that's adaptation, not mitigation. Our comp plan has a goal for both. Adaptation is saying climate is going to change. What do we do for resilience in the community? And climate action or mitigation is what do we do to mitigate our GHG, our greenhouse gas emissions, and move towards renewables, those sorts of strategies. So we've received the grant for the action adaptation work. And so that's going to be happening through 2019 and then wrapping up around June of 2020. And one last thing I just wanted to note, kind of a couple personal comments. I'm an architect and a sustainability and climate consultant, so I do this as a day job as well as my volunteer job. And I just wanted to note that, so in the last 18 months or so, I've worked with 24 cities throughout Minnesota. And I can say that Maplewood is seen as a leader in environmental and sustainability issues. And that definitely comes down to a few things. There's been a lot of work done by many folks through the commission and through the staff for a decade or longer that I think has contributed to that. I also would like to point out that we have Shawn Finwall. She is an amazing benefit to the city. She works only part-time on environmental and sustainability issues, and she contributes an amazing benefit. I'd love to see her go full-time on this. So just a couple of shout-outs for that. The other thing that I'd like to just bring up, that the city's comp plan has some really fantastic goals established, and I think that's going to force us to bring it to the next level. And a number of cities in the metro area are bringing it. They're working really hard on environmental and sustainability issues, and I would love to see us maintain our leadership. And I think some of the complexities of what we're going to be looking at as a city are going to continue to ratchet up a little bit. And so I think that it's time for us to consider how do we evolve how we approach these issues. And one thought that I have is that it would be fantastic to establish a budget for environmental and sustainability actions that could be used by our staff. Doesn't have to be massive, but just something that's thought out, planned, and anticipated. Again, it can be modest, but just something to help start to drive some of these missions that I think are going to become more and more complex and have more and more benefits for livability in the community. So I would really love to, and I and the commission would be more than happy to work with you and staff to help establish some thoughts towards a budget beginning in 2020. So thank you very much.
Any questions, any comments?
Mayor?
Councilmember Juniman?
Thank you. Thank you so much, Ted. I really appreciate that you, with your expertise and your day job, come and give us the advantage of that by volunteering as well. And I agree with you, it's time to ratchet up. We are known as leaders, and leaders are always looked to for what are they doing now. And so I think we do need to start to put some of our money where our mouth is. And we would appreciate your help in guiding that for sure. But I do agree that I think it's time to move forward. And we've done a lot in the past, and we should be proud of it. But we can't stop there. So thank you for what you've contributed.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Councilmember Smith?
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you for recognizing Ms. Finwall. I agree, but I don't think we can talk about our history of sustainability and environmentalism without mentioning Councilmember Juniman and the leadership that she has shown since before it was cool to be an environmentalist. This is decades of activism, before being on the council and the work she's done on the council to drive that policy. So it's, I just couldn't let that go by.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And I want to say thank you very much for your service and for what you folks do and the kind of advice and guidance that you provide the council. It is so important. I often sometimes think that the work that our commissions do make our jobs much easier, and they actually make us look good. And I know we are going to be talking with ENR tonight. We had a workshop, and we're going to be tapping you folks for help with our solid waste. We're going to go out for an RFP for recycling and for garbage, and so it'll be coming back to, it'll be going through your commission and then coming back to us. So thank you very much. Good report.
Thank you.
Next, we have Headsey. We have Mark Jenkins. Welcome.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the council. Stay? Okay. Mark Jenkins, Chair of the Housing and Economic Development Commission. Just a couple keynotes here to call out in front of the council. 2018, we continued to focus on the economic development and housing chapters of our comprehensive plan. Key part of that is we kicked off the North End Vision study work. We continue to champion the city's business outreach efforts. We now hold regular Maplewood Business Council meetings in partnership with St. Paul Area Chamber on topics of importance to our local businesses. We continue to support the annual State of Maplewood event, where the city gives out awards to our local businesses who are leaders in the areas of community engagement, innovation, and economic or environmental sustainability. I'll read this because my staff liaison wrote this, but the Headsey Chair serves as the moderator for the annual Business Community Engagement Breakfast, as well as the State of Maplewood, which, by the way, has probably doomed me to be the chair for the rest of my service to the city. The Headsey also partners with City Council, city staff, the St. Paul Area Chamber to conduct the city's business engagement program, which works to engage our local community businesses. This is our second year of effort in conjunction with the St. Paul Area Chamber. I always point out that it's been 2 great years with the Chamber, and we absolutely advocate that we continue that. But I also don't want all of Michael's hard work in the years prior to go unrecognized, because we did try our own little homegrown version of it too. It was great outreach to the businesses, but the data, the stuff we get from the chamber in return for that investment is well worth it. And if anyone questions it, look at the 2040 comp plan and tell me, how many pages weren't influenced in some way by the data we gathered in that program. So shout out to the St. Paul Chamber for their partnership on that as well. I always joke that I started with the Business and Economic Development Commission. I had to be on the 2 commissions with the hardest, longest names to remember. But we are the Housing and Economic Development Commission now, and I think we're finally getting our feet under us on housing, and 2019 will be a big year for that. We are working with the rental housing licensing program. We'll continue to review and provide feedback on that through 2019. I'm excited that we're looking into that. I'm excited to be part of the commission that is going to have a voice on the great opportunities and some of the challenges we're going to face in that program as well. Lastly, we'll continue to concentrate on 2 key redevelopment areas within our city. The Gladstone area, with several properties that the city has purchased, and the opportunities for both economic growth and the city's ability to continue to make that a key area within our city, a gateway to our city from the west, if you will. And of course, we'll continue to be involved in our North End development as well. So that's what we've been up to, what we got planned, and I'm open for questions.
Any questions? Councilmember Juniman.
Again, it's not a question, but Mr. Headsey is Mark's correct title. If you look at the date he started, it's 1/25/10. He's put in a lot of hours and a lot of energy, and I really think it says a lot about where this commission has gone because you stayed with it. So I appreciate everything you've done. Thank you for sticking with it and keeping us moving forward. And I really am. I'm with you. I'm really excited that the housing thing is coming to the fore. So thank you for your service, Mark.
Thank you.
And I will say that as well. Thank you for your service and for everything that HEDC does, because it is very important to the decisions that we make. And I know that this year, in terms of looking at this rental licensing program, HEDC is instrumental in guiding us. And so thank you for what you've done, and thank you for the work that is to come this next year. Thank you. Good report.
Thank you. Okay, thank you.
Next, we have Paul Arbuckle with the Planning Commission. Welcome to the council meeting.
I thought it was going to be last. Good evening, Mayor and council members and staff. I am Paul Arbuckle, the chairman of the Planning Commission, and this is my 8th year, and a few things that we have had going on. Let me get my glasses here. The focus, the future is a few of our major studies occur throughout 2018, and many are ongoing. Notable is the Planning Commission led the development and review of the 2040 comp plan and the North End Vision Study, the Rice Street Gateway Area Vision Plan, the transit planning for Rush Line and Gold Line, and we've had some other notable projects, the Trail Edge 152-unit apartment building, which will break ground later this spring, and the new Mercedes-Benz dealer will also break ground later this year. We've also had reviewed proposals amendments for the new to the city's zoning code requirements for developers to hold open houses prior to applying applications being submitted. Council will consider approving that later this spring. We've also had several conditional use requests, new laundromat, auto dealership, and a banquet hall, allowing new business to refurbish and utilize existing commercial buildings throughout the city. And we're continuing to work on the North End review development project. We had about the average of, we had 24 reviewed plans last year, which is about the average. 25 is about the average. And I think that was basically how our year went.
Thank you very much. Council members, any comments? Councilmember Smith?
I just want to reiterate what the mayor said before. The work that you guys do is so incredibly valuable. You know, it's gives me such great confidence to know when projects come to us that you guys have dug deep, looked into a lot of the challenges, asked the right questions, and applied your expertise to that process. And whether it's through you guys through HEDC or through Design Review Board or through ENR, we know that there's, especially when projects have come through all four, that there's an incredible amount of due diligence done. And I'll tell you, for one, I'm awfully leery to ever go against any commission decisions because I know how much work goes into that and how much thought goes into it. So I really do appreciate what you guys do. Thank you.
Welcome.
You know, just to put this in context, if, looking at our packets, in terms of the kinds of commercial construction, which obviously all had to come through your planning commission, the project's value was $71,918,430 worth of projects came through your commission during 2018, which is really quite amazing. big responsibility, and I think that you folks have done a great job. Paul, you do a great job of running the meetings. I have been the liaison in the past. After tonight, I'm no longer going to be. But you have always run a wonderful meeting and done a great job. So thank you very much for your service, and for the commissioners. They do a really good job. They help us do our work.
You're welcome,
Councilmember
and
Juniman.
and enjoy doing it too, and be part of that.
I'd like to ditto what they've said, and I've been here so long that I've sat through many planning commissioners, and it's probably one of the most important pieces of any packet. What you people have processed for a project speaks volumes to me, things that I don't have to do that I know you did, and you did well. So it's a very important function. We really appreciate it. Thank you,
You're
Paul.
welcome.
Thank you very much. Mr. Martin, does that conclude the commissioners' reports?
Mayor and council, yes, we've heard from everyone. The only other thing I'd like to add is, so everyone on the council received the hard copies today. There are a few extra copies in the back of the room for anyone else if they want to take one on their way out. Otherwise, it is on our city website.
Okay. And Mr. Martin, I want to thank you too for doing such a great job with our commissions. I know that you work long and hard, and we really, really appreciate it. I want to thank staff for this report. Being on the council for this number of years, this is the best report that I have seen, and I think it's a combination of a lot of people who have put this together, but there is so much information on this from I love the pictures of the commissioners. I think that that's a great way to identify who people are. Nuggets of information about when they meet, what they have accomplished over the last year. This is a really valuable document. It's a snapshot of what 2018 looked like in our city and how much we moved forward. And I know Mr. Funk was part of this. I know that our communications department was part of it. This is a fabulous document. I think it's great for our citizens. Look it up on the website, or I'm sure we'll have extra copies here. You said that there were some in the back. This tells a story about Maplewood, and I think it is excellent to see what we did this last year. When I was reading it again, because we passed this out at the State of the City address, and I read it after that, when I read it again, I was looking at it and thinking, there were so many things that we accomplished in 1 year time. It was a great snapshot. So thank you very much, staff, for doing that. Anything else concerning the
Mayor and council, we just ask that the council does make a motion to
thank
approve
you.
and receive the report.
Thank you very much.
I move approval of the Community Development Department Annual Report.
Second, anyone?
Second?
Moved by Juniman, seconded by Smith to approve the 2018 Community Development Department Annual Report. All those in favor?
Aye.
Ayes all. Motion passes.
Madam Mayor?
Thank you very much.
Madam Mayor?
Yes,
I think we
Councilwoman
should
Juniman.
also emphasize that when you see the number of people involved from the community, this could not happen without all of those people. So it'd be worth people's time just to look through this to see how many of your fellow residents who give their time all year long so that good things can happen here. It is remarkable.
It is. Thank you, everyone, for putting all that together. Okay, moving on to our next agenda item, the 2019 City Council appointments to boards, commissions, and miscellaneous groups. City Manager Coleman.
Thank you, Mayor Abrams, members of the City Council. We typically, at the first meeting of the year, assign the City Council to the annual appointments to boards, commissions, and groups in which the city is a member, and to those who serve at the pleasure of the council. Given the vacancies that we had on the City Council, other than the acting mayor, all the complements of these commissions were tabled until this evening. So tonight, we will review those. It's in your packet, page 37, and we will need a motion to approve. And Mayor, if it's okay with you, I'll just read through the appointments. Certainly. Okay? So we already, on January 11th, appointed Councilmember Juniman as the acting mayor for 2019. Our auditor contacts will be Mayor Abrams and Councilmember Juniman. Our representative to the Community Design Review Board will be Councilmember Knutson. with Mike Martin being the staff liaison. Our data compliance officer's responsible authority is Andrea Sint, our city clerk. City personnel officer is Terry Rameau, and city law enforcement officer is Chief Scott Nadeau. The development committee, and this is the committee that oversees my professional development and my annual performance review. And for 2019, that is Mayor Abrams and Councilmember Smith. Big job. Our Economic Development Authority Chair is Councilmember Smith. The ENR Resources Commission Liaison is Councilmember Juneman is the council member to that group, and Sean Finwall is the staff liaison. The Gateway Corridor Group, we have the CMC, which is Councilmember Smith, and Mayor Abrams is the alternate. And the PAC, which is the Political Action Committee, I think, or advisory, sorry, yep. That's Councilmember Neblett, and Steve Love is the alternate to that. The Heritage Preservation Commission is Councilmember Neblett, and Ginny Gaynor is our staff liaison. Housing and Economic Development Commission is Councilmember Smith, and Mike Martin is the staff liaison. Maplewood Communications, these are the council member who works with our communications team, and that's Mayor Abrams with Councilmember Smith being the alternate. The Maplewood Green Team, representatives Councilmember Juneman and Sean Finwall is the staff liaison. Our official newspaper is the Maplewood Review, and that's where we publish all of our public hearing notices and other official business that's required to be published. Our Park and Recreation Commission representative is Commissioner Neblett, or Councilmember Neblett, and Audra Robbins is the staff liaison. Planning Commission, Councilmember Knutson, and Mike Martin is the staff liaison. The Police Advisory Commission is Councilmember Smith, Councilmember Juneman is the alternate, and Commander Shortreed is the staff liaison. With the Ramsey County Dispatch Policy Committee is Councilmember Juneman with Mayor Abrams, the alternate. Ramsey County League of Local Governments representative is Mayor Abrams, and Councilmember Smith is the alternate. Regional Mayors is Mayor Abrams, and that's a group that meets monthly to talk about regional issues, and they do a lot of great work, and we get to hear about what other communities are doing. The Rice and Larpenter Project is Mayor Abrams with Councilmember Juneman as the alternate. Rushline Corridor is Mayor Abrams with Councilmember Smith as the alternate and Melinda Coleman as the staff liaison. St. Paul Regional Water Services Board of Commissioners, Mayor Abrams is the representative, and Melinda Coleman, myself, will be the alternate. The Suburban Area Chamber of Commerce is Melinda Coleman, Mayor Abrams, and Councilmember Smith. And the Suburban Rate Authority is Steve Love. So we do need a motion, and Mayor, you can.
Councilmember Juneman.
Thank you. I have a question. Under the Rice Larpenter project, don't we have Sean Finwall as our staff representative on that one?
Yes.
Oh,
Yes,
Good.
thank you.
Beginning, I believe.
We will add that.
Thank you.
anything else, council members? Okay,
I move the 2019,
Or,
Councilmember Smith.
Yeah, sorry, I just want to make sure it's clear for everybody what we did with the gold line.
yeah.
So as the Gold Line moved away from the Gateway project into the Gold Line as an official now transit project, there's several different groups. There's the CMC, which is made up of only elected officials, and that's the group that votes on sort of the key aspects of the project. The Policy Advisory Committee, which is actually now called Gold Line Partners, we might want to update that,
okay.
is a really interesting group made up of a combination of electeds as well as community and business leaders, and they are sort of the folks that are kind of driving the championing the overall project, and then also sort of lending advice to various elements of the project. And so I was on both because I was on the Gateway Corridor before, and the last meeting we went to noticed that Woodbury had split that between two different council members, which I thought was really smart because it widens the bench and develops more knowledge of the project, things like that. So that's why we did that. So I'm looking forward to working with Councilmember Neblett on that, on the overall project.
Great. Thank you. Do I have a motion to approve the 2019 City Council appointments to boards, commissions, and miscellaneous groups?
I move approval of the city council appointments so stated.
Second?
Moved by Juniman, seconded by Smith. You got in under the wire. To approve the 2019 City Council appointments to boards, commissions, and miscellaneous groups. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. Next, we move on to the consent agenda. Does anyone have any, want to highlight anything on the consent agenda? Discuss anything? Councilmember Juniman.
Could we highlight number 6, please?
Number 6. Okay, why don't we take that? G6, let's see, that is, well, City Manager Coleman, do you want to take that? Resolution of support for a pollution control agency climate adaptation grant?
Yes, thank you, Mayor, members of the commission. The climate adaptation grant will ensure operational effectiveness by assisting the city in planning for impacts of climate change and improving community resilience. And we heard a little bit about that from Mr. Redmond earlier this evening. To ensure community inclusiveness, grant funds will include a community engagement and outreach process with key stakeholders, and particularly our vulnerable populations. So this is something funded through the MPCA, and they are providing us financial assistance. And as you heard, we will be getting, I think, $30,000, and we do then require a commitment of 25% matching funds, which I believe can be staff in kind.
Thank you for highlighting that.
Anyone else? Okay, then do we have a motion?
I move consent agenda items G1 through 7.
Moved by Juniman, consent agenda items 1 through 7. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilmember Neblett. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes for the consent agenda. And now we move on to our public hearing. Tonight, we have a public hearing concerning the Ferndale Ivy area street improvement. Mr. Love, do you want to begin talking about this, please?
Mayor and Council, good evening. As you mentioned, this is the Ferndale Ivy Area Street Improvement City Project 1801. Tonight, I have with me John Jarosh. He's our Assistant City Engineer and Project Lead on the project. He'll be giving a presentation. In the audience, we also have Tyler Strong. He's one of our staff engineers. He joined us early this summer and has been doing a great job. I'd just like to mention that Tyler, after the council is done with this item, will be available out in the open area out there if there's additional questions or residents are looking for additional information. So with that, I will go ahead and turn it over to John for our presentation. We are going to include more information on assessments. I know last council meeting we provided some information, and this is going to be a more in-depth explanation of assessments as part of John's presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. Thank you, Mayor and Council. I'm here tonight to talk to you about the Ferndale Ivy Area Street Improvement Project, City Project 18-01. Tonight we're here to hold the public hearing as well as consider ordering the improvements following receiving that public input. So the map on the right-hand side of the screen shows the streets included with this project. They're generally bounded by Maryland Avenue to the south and Century Avenue on the east. The streets included with the project include Ivy Avenue, Ferndale Street, Dennis Street, Farrell Street, Mayhill Road, and Hawthorne Avenue. The project streets total 1.2 miles in length and have an average pavement condition index rating of 46 out of 100. Basically, the pavement in this neighborhood has deteriorated to the point where patching is no longer cost-effective or possible. There's numerous drainage issues within the project area as well. We have water ponding in the streets, significant icing issues in portions of the project in the winter. as well as a high groundwater table in the neighborhood, a lot of sump pumps discharging all year round. There are also some minor water main and sanitary sewer issues within the neighborhood. Looking at the public outreach, we sent out an informational packet and questionnaire back in October of the year to inform the residents about the project and gather feedback from them on the project area. We've held 2 neighborhood meetings to date, the first of those in November of last year, and then a second one as an update to that first meeting in January of this year. We've also had a number of phone call conversations, emails, as well as one-on-one meetings with the residents from the project area. Looking into the future, we have additional neighborhood meetings scheduled, and we'll be sending out additional letters and flyers as the project progresses. So taking into account the data that we had, as well as the feedback we received from residents within the project area, we developed the project scope. So staff is recommending a full street reconstruction on the neighborhood streets with the installation of new concrete curb and gutter, a new aggregate base, and a new base underneath that aggregate base to really provide a solid foundation for that new pavement. And then on top of that base, we're looking at 2 new layers of asphalt pavement. We're also looking at significant upgrades to that storm sewer system in the area to address the drainage concerns, not only that we noticed, but that the residents in the area noted during the neighborhood meetings. We're also proposing sidewalks on select neighborhood streets. These include Ferndale Street, the west side of Ferndale Street from Maryland to Ivy Avenue, as well as Ivy Avenue from Century Avenue to the cul-de-sac up by the Pondview Apartments. There's a number of sanitary sewer repairs, as well as some minor water main repairs we're looking at with the project as well. Overall, we're estimating the project to total just over $3.8 million. We're proposing to fund that project through a combination of general obligation improvement bonds, assessments to the benefiting properties, as well as through the various utility funds. So I'll take a minute to just discuss what the special assessments are. Like I noted on the previous slide, they're one of the funding sources utilized to finance these improvement projects. So the properties directly abutting the improvements are asked to pay an assessment for the direct benefit to their property from this project. Now, each year, the City Council sets the maximum rates for those different types of improvements. And then during the project development phase, the city hires an independent appraisal firm to determine what that actual benefit to those properties is. And then per Minnesota State Statute 429, the assessment amount cannot be greater than that direct benefit to the property. We're currently proposing that assessment hearing to be on April 22nd of this year. And prior to that assessment hearing, all the residents within the project area would be mailed an official notice of their assessment. And on that notice, it would discuss the amount of their assessment, what options there are for paying that assessment, deferral options, as well as their right to object to their assessment. There are several options for paying the assessments. Residents can make a full or partial payment after that assessment hearing with the remaining amount certified to their county taxes, or the full amount of their assessment could be certified to the county taxes. And all those certified amounts are to be paid over a 15-year period with interest with their county property taxes. The deferral options available are basically delay the assessment, delay the payment of that assessment for a 15-year period, but they do accrue interest during that time frame. Deferrals are available for people that are 65 years of age or older, people that are retired by virtue of a permanent or total disability, members of the National Guard or Military Reserve called into active duty, or someone with a proven financial hardship. There are deferrals available for those. They basically delay the assessment, but they do come due with interest at the end of that period. There's also what's referred to as the undeveloped property deferral, which is another deferral. It's a 15-year period. It does accrue interest during that time frame. However, this one differs in that that assessment will be terminated if no improvements are made to that undeveloped property within that 15-year period. Looking forward, we're here tonight to hold the public hearing. So after that public input is received on the proposed improvement, the council will vote on ordering the improvement. And just to note that a supermajority vote is required to move the project to the next step tonight. So that would be a minimum of 4 affirmative votes. If approved, we look at continuing the design and finishing that up in April with a bid opening held in April. We're proposing that assessment hearing and award of contract to be held on April 22nd. That would be the meeting at which residents can provide the council with input on the proposed assessments. And after you receive all that input, council would consider awarding a construction contract. And at that meeting, it would be a simple majority vote that would be required to move it forward. If everything is approved, construction would begin in May of this year, and the entire project would be wrapped up in November of the year. So with that, staff is recommending that the City Council hold the public hearing tonight. And after receiving that public input, staff is recommending that the council consider approval of the attached resolution ordering the improvement for the Ferndale Ivy Area Street Improvements City Project 18-01. And staff is available for questions.
Thank you. Does anyone have any questions for Mr. Jarish or Mr. Love?
Mayor, I would like to point out that apparently Mr. Knutson and I don't need any enlightenment because our screen is
Oh.
That's fine. They must think we know enough about it or
It
something.
hasn't worked all night or just now?
No, all night.
I'm reading. Okay.
Can we look into that? Is there anyone who can look into that?
I got something to say.
Yeah. You know, I think
Okay, I just.
we're
wanted
having
to-
a technical difficulty, but thank you.
We're perfectly capable
I'm reading.
following
Okay.
along,
We're
but
good.
I just wanted you to know we weren't being enlightened.
I think they're rebooting it right
They're
now.
trying, yeah.
It still did not.
It's not you after it's me.
Okay, well, we have a technical difficulty. I think we'll
We're
just
fine.
move on if you, okay. Thank you. I thought what I would do, since there aren't any questions from the council, is explain briefly how the public hearing is going to operate. Once I gavel the opening of the public hearing, I have a list of people who intend on speaking. Is there anyone else who would like to add their name to this list? Because now is the time to do it.
I have a question. Put my name on.
Okay. Want to put that down? Okay. Anyone else who'd like to have their name added? Okay, once I gavel the opening of the meeting, then I will call the individuals that are on this list, and you'll have an opportunity to come up to the microphone. You'll have 3 minutes to express whatever thoughts, concerns, questions that you have for the council and for staff during that 3 minutes. It's your 3 minutes. And so we will listen to you, and there may be questions at the end. We're going to reserve all of the questions until the very end and get those answered. When we go through, we've got 4 names on here right now. When we complete that, then I will call 3 times and ask if there's anyone else who wants to speak before the public hearing, and then I will close the public hearing, and then we will get to the question part of it. Okay? So, is everyone ready? With that, I will open up the public hearing for the H1 Ferndale Ivy Area Street Improvement City Project 18-01. The first name on our list for the public hearing is Ms. Stephanie, I'm sorry, it starts with a B.
Begbedir. It's French.
Say it one more time.
Begbedir. It's French.
Okay. Welcome to the Maplewood public hearing, and we'll set your time.
Thank you for hearing me. I am here, I'm a resident of Beaver Creek Carriage Homes, which is a home ownership association, which is part of a PUD that Maplewood developed in 1985, which was this part, it's apartments, it's trailer homes, and it's private home ownership. And I think that the board needs to know and remember back to 1985 when that was developed, to consider the legality of the restrictions that are associated with that PUD, Planned Urban Development, that was in 1985 made and built on a wetland. I'm opposed to concrete sidewalks. Asphalt deals with the heaving. We have problems every year in our parking lot with the heaving and the ice and the freezing, and I think that city needs to take that into consideration when they assess our building, because every year we have problems. I think concrete sidewalks are ridiculous. I believe asphalt is better because it then handles the heaving of the land. I don't believe the assessments are reasonable. I don't know where these people live, but they don't live where I live. And we deal with the snow and the heaving and every year, and a concrete sidewalk would be ridiculous, where an asphalt sidewalk would deal with the up and down of the freezing and the thawing of the streets. And I don't know why the city doesn't pay a portion of the repair, because the buses come through every 30 minutes and they are part of the problem. I mean, I heard from some guy said you have an agreement with the state where you don't charge them back, but I think we should be charging them back, because it's not fair for our citizens to be having to pay for public transportation going down our road every 30 minutes and us be responsible for that. In addition, I just think that the city is not looking at the interests of the citizens that live on those blocks. And you don't live there. Do you ever drive by there? No. You don't know what it's like. Take a look. You know, there aren't that many people that go down that road. We don't need sidewalks. We really don't. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next, we have Kelly Tenner.
Thank you, Mayor, council members, staff. My name is Kelly Tenner. I am the caretaker and board member at the Beaver Creek Carriage Homes. And we are actually very excited about this, but we do have two concerns that we would like to address. Number one is that the sidewalks that will be put in on the west side are going to be on our side. And we want to make sure that those are not going to be our responsibility to shovel, because I know a lot of people are required to shovel those sidewalks in front of their homes, and we just want to make sure that that's not going to be the condominium association's responsibility to take care of, because I would have to do it. And then number two, when we look at the street, Ferndale is where it is, and we're on the corner of Ferndale and Maryland. And there's 60 units, 3 separate buildings, and then halfway through, it's wetlands. So we just, again, want to confirm that we're not paying for any of this road being built for the wetland portion on the west side of Ferndale. Because how we understand it is that we would be paying for just the southern half of Ferndale on the western side. And at 60 units times $750 a unit, which is our estimate, that would be approximately $45,000. Whereas the same portion that is on the east side of Ferndale consists of 2 townhomes and 1 private residence, which would cost like $10,000 according to these proposed assessments. So why is the left-hand side of the street $45,000 and the right-hand side of the street only $10,000? It doesn't seem fair. So that's the concerns I would like to bring up, and thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Tenner. Next, we have Lori Vogel. We need to be able to hear you. It's also being recorded, too. Thank you.
I am Lori. I'm with Maplewood. I purchased my townhome at 1276 Ferndale back in '95. So I've lived there for 24 years. I raised my daughter, who is 27 now. I love Maplewood. When I face out my deck on Ferndale, I'm looking at the wetlands across the street. It's beautiful. There's deer and fox, and it's lovely. One thing that I think might be fit into that area instead of permanent sidewalks, which there aren't a lot of people that walk down the sidewalk other than people that are from the apartments down off of Ivy. But maybe just like the Bark, have a little trail to walk through there. It is very, very soggy in that area. Ever since I moved in 24 years ago, the only time I can step out on my yard is in July when it's parched. It's like a sponge. If you just walk over a sponge, your body is sinking into the ground. So there is deficiencies in that. And it has been known for years, I think, when it was approved and built back in the early 80s. Probably never should have been approved because of the wetlands there in the water table. My main issue about this is not denying that we need some work done, but it's the hardship of the payment. If I'm going to be assessed $5,000 to $6,000 for my townhome, my take-home salary is $24,000 a year. So there's 25% of my income is, right now I don't have a working furnace. My furnace is broke. I'm using electric heaters. I'm living paycheck to paycheck. So this is really hard to take, to have that kind of money. I've been struggling to come up from losing a job, having family issues. And it's just another struggle. I've been a good citizen of Maplewood, and I love Maplewood, but I'll probably be selling. So, and I guess one question I did have is across the street from us, where it's all wetlands, is the city paying for that half side of the street? Because that whole stretch across from the Cave Century townhomes, from 1210 to 1290, that whole stretch is pretty much, except for the carriage homes, all wetlands. So I don't know how the street assessments work when that is all the wetlands across the street. Who's paying for that portion? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Vogel. Mr. Arbuckle.
Good evening, Mayor and council members and staff. I guess my questions that I have is, when they do the streets, do they do core borings enough to determine how much base, if they're talking about these wetlands? And will the project be the living streets, that we had designated with most of it? And then if the oil prices continue to, if they were to go up, skyrocket again, would they ever consider doing concrete streets? So those are, I guess, my three main questions that I have. So, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we have a whole series of questions. First, I want to ask, is there anyone else who would like to speak at the public hearing? Anyone else who would like to speak at the public hearing? One more time, anyone else who would like to speak at the public hearing?
Can I just ask one question? Do you guys know about?
I've already gavelled, I've already asked, and so at that point, our public hearing is closed. And now, what I'm going to do is ask for Mr. Love and Mr. Jerish if they would please address the questions. I know you're taking notes, and I've been taking notes too. Why don't we start with Stephanie's questions? I'm sorry, I didn't.
I was just curious if they were even aware of the wetlands.
Oh, yes. She raised some questions about being opposed to sidewalks and problems with the ice and heaving problems. Do you want to respond to that,
Sure,
please?
Mayor and Council, I'll take a first run at a few of these here. With the sidewalks, typically our sidewalks are made of concrete. One of the main reasons is they don't make a paver that paves like a 5-foot wide width. So you can't you don't have a paver that can pave an asphalt sidewalk at 5 feet wide. As far as the sidewalks, we're looking them on Ivy and Ferndale. Along there, as was mentioned, there's a bus route that comes through there. The idea is kind of along the lines of living streets, where we're narrowing up the road a little bit, providing room for pedestrian connections. Those, I'm going to hit a few questions here as I'm
Sure.
talking. The sidewalk would be maintained by the city, so that would be both snow removal as well as any repairs that need to be made. The sidewalk does provide connections to, again, the apartments up at the end of Ivy. I don't want to downsell that place because, that is a large number of people there as well. And so the sidewalk would run up there. And it would be also adjacent to the mobile home park there. Let's see here. Certainly, the question was asked about ice heaving. We do soil borings. We do a number of soil borings on our projects to determine what the current soils are underneath. We get a recommendation from a soil testing company on a road cross section. So we know that this is an area that we've experienced flooding in the past on. So we did a study prior to the feasibility study specifically on drainage, and those improvements are incorporated into this project as well. So we certainly know the difficulties of the water table out there and the water, and so the proposed design is accounting for that information as well. Assessments. So I'm just going to get a page here so I don't say the wrong number. Well, okay. So the assessments where we're at right now is we've assessed per the assessment policy, the amounts. Places such as multifamily dwellings, they are based on a linear foot rather than a per unit basis. I want to remind the council that these are the maximum assessment rates. We do hire a special benefit appraisal for this project where they go out and they determine what that benefit to that property is, and we take the lower of the two. So if it comes back that the appraisal is less than what our maximums are set at, we'll be using that for the assessments. That information will be made available to all the residents prior to the proposed assessment hearing. Right now, for the Beaver Creek condominiums, I believe we have an assessment rate per unit of $748. That's per unit. And for the quadplexes right now is $4,900. So those rates, again, are based off of our policy. Multifamily is by the linear foot. And then single-family homes, the difference with that is they're done on a per-unit basis. I believe that was $6,600 for a single-family residential unit.
I think that addresses those questions. In terms of the water issues, can you explain a little bit more about what we're doing with the wetlands?
The water issues really isn't with the wetland. What we have a lot of problems with is water flowing east to west through the neighborhood. The storm sewer there is limited. There's been some flooding there on the local streets, so we're increasing that storm sewer capacity in the neighborhood to be able to get the water from the neighborhood to the west. Additionally, at the southeast of the site, there's an apartment complex off of Century Avenue where there's a public right-of-way that drains into the back of some of the homes, and so we're going to be extending storm sewer up there to pick that up versus having it travel over land. So there's a pretty extensive amount of stormwater improvements along with drain tile on the project. So this would be a perforated pipe that's built into the road cross section that helps take that water from underneath the road and drain it out, and it helps mitigate the freeze-thaw cycles that we have with our winters.
Okay, there was a question about the section of road that has the wetlands on one side and then residential on the other side.
Yep.
Can you explain how that assessment works?
Certainly, Mayor and Council. So the city doesn't assess itself for a project. What happens is that the assessment amount per property is based off the special benefit, and it's the benefit to that property. The rest of the project, so in this case, I think 27% is being covered by special assessments. The rest of the project is being paid by the city through various funds, whether that be utility funds or general obligation bonds. So a large portion of the project is paid through other funds other than assessments. For example, 1.688 million is in geo bonding. We have $647,000 anticipated for stormwater improvements in the project. We have $262,000 in sanitary sewer funds, $122 in WAC funds, and another $60,000 in St. Paul Water. Those last two are related to our water main systems. So roughly 27% is through assessment, and the rest is being paid by the city, essentially the residents of the city as a whole.
Okay, I think that helps explain kind of how that works. What's being put into the project is much more than what the homeowners are being assessed. The city is actually paying for a large portion of it. Can you explain about hardship cases? Because we certainly recognize that these projects are expensive and that it can be a real burden on people. What are some of the options that people have?
Certainly. Mayor and Council, so with assessments, we'll start off at first with payment options. There are 3 different options for residents for payment on assessments. If somebody does have the money and wishes to pay for the assessment in whole, they can certainly do that. If they want to make a partial payment and then have the rest of that assessment put onto their property taxes for a period of 15 years, they can do that. Or if they don't have any money to put towards it right now, it can be put on their property taxes for a period of 15 years. There is interest during that. The interest rate is normally pretty reasonable. With deferrals, it's not a cancellation of the assessment. You're delaying that, but there are situations for if there's a military one. If you're active duty, you can get a deferral. You have age, yep, and also permanent disability, as well as being 65 and older as a senior. So again, all that is required for that is prior to the assessment hearing, we'll be sending out a notice, and residents who are interested in a deferral can submit in writing that they wish to do so. And then the council will review that with staff's recommendations and make a decision at the assessment hearing.
Okay. In terms of, I think you've already answered the question about doing borings on the street, that has already been accomplished. Can you talk just a little bit about living streets and the fact that is a part of what the city has adopted?
Yeah, absolutely. So the city has certain water quality requirements that we have to meet, both with the state as well as with our watershed district. And what Living Streets does is that we take a look at trying to accomplish a number of things. There's a narrowing of the roadway. This helps reduce the amount of stormwater runoff that we have from our streets. This helps with water quality. Additionally, we look at pedestrian improvements, in select areas. For example, we're not proposing them on all the streets. We know that our residents have said in a number of surveys that we've done that pedestrian connections are very important. Again, those pedestrian connections are maintained by the city. We also look at providing tree plantings where appropriate to help cut down on the heat island effect. So it's Living Streets is taking a look at a lot of different things and trying to find a very good cross section for the road. Additionally, we look at long-term sustainability. You know, with a narrower road, there's less time plowing, there's less future maintenance. When you're talking about if you're doing a fog treatment of the asphalt later or a pavement replacement, it's a reduced area.
And I think the last question I wrote down was considering the oil prices. Has the city thought about using concrete streets instead of asphalt?
Mayor and council, at this point, we have not reached that level for cost-wise, but there's also a practicality. If you have if there's something wrong underneath the utility or something that needs to be fixed, concrete is certainly a lot harder to dig up these small patches, and asphalt's is certainly a lot easier to put a patch back in and have it stay.
Those were all of my notes in terms of questions. Did you have anything else that you wanted to respond to?
Again, I just want to reiterate that the sidewalks are owned and maintained by the city. I think that's the big thing. That's both not only snow removal, but if a sidewalk panel does heave, it would be the city that would be responsible for fixing that.
Okay. Councilmember Juniman, you had a question?
I was just moving up when he was talking about the deferrals, whether it's an age referral or a disability or simply a proven financial hardship. You can apply for that deferral, and what it revolves around really is you providing the correct paperwork filled out and returned to the staff for them to view it, to know that this is legitimate, and then you will receive a judgment on that deferral, correct?
Madam Mayor, if I could respond. That's essentially correct, but let me be clear. There are only three categories that qualify for the kind of deferral that we're talking about. It's 65 or older, it's retired because of permanent and total disability, or active members of the military. But the caveat in all those cases is that it has to be a financial hardship for those individuals to pay. So it's not just that you're over 65, it also has to be a financial hardship, and it only applies to homestead property. So as Councilmember Juniman suggests, if you fall into one of those categories or feel that you do, you can apply to the city. The statute outlines what I just said. It allows cities to decide what constitutes financial hardship. Each one does that a little bit differently, but it's usually looking at income and comparing the annual assessment payment versus a certain percentage of your income.
I just wanted people to be aware that they could apply, but you have to supply some substance to prove that that's true. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Council members, is there any other discussion? Okay, then at this point, we need a motion to approve the attached resolution ordering the improvement for the Ferndale Ivy area street improvements, City Project 18-01, and 4 affirmative votes are required to approve this resolution. Is there a motion?
Move to approve the attached resolution ordering the improvement for the Ferndale Ivy area street improvement, City Project 18-01.
Second. Moved by Smith, second by Juniman, to approve the attached resolution ordering the improvement for the Ferndale Ivy area street improvement, City Project 1801. All those in favor?
Aye.
It's unanimous. The motion passes. Thank you, council members. Thank you, everyone. We have no
Just want to mention that Tyler Strong will be out in the atrium area there. If anybody does have any additional questions, you can certainly speak to Tyler.
Thank you. Tyler, do you want to head out so that people can see who you are? And then if you have any specific questions, you can talk with Tyler, and he can get you some answers. Thank you very much. Thank you for that reminder. Okay, the last agenda item is under new business, resolution accepting a feasibility report. Council members, this is the second spring item that we're talking about, is road construction. Authorizing the preparation of plans and specifications for the Mayland Crestview Forest Area Pavement Rehabilitation Project. Mr. Love, this is yours as well.
Mayor and Council, again, this project here is one of our gas franchise fee projects. John will be giving us a short presentation. It's very similar to the presentation we gave last week, but since we just spoke about assessments, we're going to spare you guys going over it a second time here. So with that, I'll turn it over to John.
Thank you again, Steve. Thank you, Mayor, Council. This is the Mayland Crestview Forest Area Street Improvement, City Project 18-27. On the right-hand side of the screen, you'll see the streets included with this project. This time we're down in the south leg of Maplewood. The project area is generally bounded by McKnight Road on the west, London Lane on the north, Hillwood Drive on the south, and then, let's say, Century Avenue on the east. The streets included as part of the project are Mayland Road, Mary Street, Mary Lane, O'Day Street, O'Day Lane, Pond Avenue, O'Day Circle, and then down in the south part of the project, there's Crestview Forest Drive and Deer Ridge Lane. The streets in this project area total 2.1 miles in length and have an average pavement condition index rating of 36 out of 100. Like the previous project, the pavement in this area has deteriorated to the point where patching is no longer cost effective. The difference in this area is the majority of that concrete curb and gutter is in satisfactory condition. There is some what's referred to as type S curbing in front of some of the driveway entrances. This is a really abrupt style of curb that causes issues for vehicles entering and exiting the driveways. The utilities in the project area are generally in good condition. And similar to that last project, we have one portion of this project, particularly O'Day Street, that has high groundwater. So we have sump pumps running frequently, some ponding in the roadway, as you can see on the picture on the screen, as well as icing the roadway in the winter. We sent out an informational packet to the residents in this neighborhood back in October of 2018. That informational packet included a pavement rehabilitation article, a street improvement frequently asked questions flyer, as well as an assessment informational flyer. And we did hold 2 neighborhood meetings. The first one was in November of the last year, at which we held a presentation that discussed the public improvement process, the scope of the project, the assessments, the sources of funding, as well as an estimated project timeline. And that was followed by a question and answer session. And then neighborhood meeting number 2 was an update to the first neighborhood meeting, and more importantly, another opportunity to receive feedback from the residents. Taking all that information into account, we developed the project scope. This project is a pavement reclamation project, so we're looking at grinding up that existing street pavement and mixing it in with the aggregate base material below to create a new base for the road. We're proposing to install two new layers of pavement on top of that new base. Any deteriorated concrete curb and gutter, we look at replacing that as part of the project, and then replacing that type S curbing in front of those driveways to create a more gentle transition into the driveways. In order to address those drainage concerns we were seeing on O'Day Street, we were proposing significant drain tile beneath the roadway to remove that water from beneath the road section, as well as some additional catch basin installations. And there are also some minor utility manhole and valve adjustments to bring those lids up to the proposed elevation of the street. Overall, the total estimated project cost for this project is just over $1.6 million, with the funding including gas franchise fees, assessments to the benefiting properties, as well as the Environmental Utility Fund, Sanitary Sewer Fund, and the WAC Fund. The City Council ordered the preparation of the feasibility study back in August of last year. We're here tonight to consider receiving that feasibility study. If we move forward tonight, plans will be prepared for the rest of February and into March, with the proposal of that public hearing being held on March 11th. If we move forward at that point, a bid opening would be held in April of the year, and the assessment hearing and the consideration of awarding construction contract would be held in May. This project, construction, we're looking at starting in the late June timeframe and going through November of the year. And with that, staff is recommending approval of the resolution accepting the feasibility study, authorizing preparations of plans and specifications, and calling for a public hearing for the Malin Crestview Forest Area Street Improvements City Project 18-27. Staff is available for questions.
Okay, thank you very much. Councilmember Juniman, you have a question?
No, I have a comment, actually. If anybody had any question about whether this needed doing or not, I think you've provided sufficient photographs of what used to be streets that we would have no doubt, I say. And I would also like to point out that, as you said, this is thanks to our gas franchise program, and it's 47% of the cost is being covered by the gas franchise fee. These streets would still be on the calendar further down without this, so I just think it's phenomenal. And of course, we can't help but point out that I think it has something to do with a gift from MnDOT a few years ago.
I wanted to, for the benefit of our new council members and maybe for citizens who are watching as well, can you please explain the gas franchise fee and how this works? That would be very helpful. A little historical background. I know Councilmember Juniman, myself, and Councilmember Smith have been here, but our two new council members who have joined us, I think, would appreciate that.
Absolutely. Mayor and Council, so for those of you that were here back in 2018, one of the things that the City Council asked us to do is take a look at our streets, kind of report back what kind of condition they're in and what can we do to improve more of these streets. So back in 2018, we have 135 miles of streets. 60% of them are in good to excellent condition, with 26% of them being rated at being needing replacement or near the end of their life cycle. We have about 14% that were considered in fair condition. So not only was council asking us how can we improve these streets, but one of the council's goals also was to lower the amount of debt that we have. So those two things tend to go in opposite directions. So I worked with our finance director, and we looked at options of how we can fund more projects. And so one of the things that we looked at was increasing our gas and electrical franchise fees. So what these are is they're fees to the utilities for using our right-of-way, and these fees do tend to get passed on to residents. But what they are is they become a dedicated funding source for street projects that are independent of tax levies and tax adjustments. So they're a set thing and they're dedicated strictly for street improvement projects. So our goal, working with our finance director, was to come up with a way to reduce new bonding levels by $1 million a year. So first we looked at different things that we could do in our budget with cuts and stuff, and we were able to limit that by $350,000. So what we looked for with this increase in gas and electrical franchise fees was an increase of $650,000 per year to what we already were getting. So when we looked at what that would take, essentially what it came down to was an increase in 50 cents per resident on average for gas a month, and for electric $1.75. So this, a lot of these street reclaim projects that we talk about, we refer to them as our gas franchise fee because that's kind of where it started at. But Councilmember Juniman was absolutely correct. Without this additional funding, not only would we not be doing these streets, they wouldn't be on our 5-year CIP in order to achieve our bonding levels. So these streets do still, residents are still treated very much the same in the sense that assessments are used, just like on our full street reconstruction projects. It's just that rather than bonding for this money, we're paying as we go. So, and if I know Ellie would be able to also provide some additional information if you have any more questions about it.
I know City Manager Coleman had something she wanted to add as well.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the City Council. One of the things that the franchise fees allows us to do is really spread the cost of our street improvements to all of our residents and businesses and our non-tax-paying entities. So, for example, churches and schools, county properties, they then contribute through their utility usage to the improvements of our roads, which we think is a fair way to raise money to do this. And this also allows us to kind of manage the debt level versus the amount of projects that we do. So it helps us tremendously.
Councilmember Juniman.
Yeah, I was going to say that part of what brought this to the surface is it was a combination of wanting to control our debt load, but the other piece was there are a lot of streets in the south leg that, while they're not as old as some of the old wrecks in the northern part of the city, several years ago, several cities basically got the screws from MnDOT with some bad asphalt. And so the streets, people down there were coming to us with petitions, do our streets, we don't care what you charge us, just do it. And so that means we need to be doing it, and we didn't want to increase our debt. So this was I think it was a good deal all the way around. And it also, like you said, the other thing that appeals to me as a policymaker is that it does allow us to get some payback from those entities that do use our streets but do not pay taxes. So I really think it was a perfect fit, and it's helping us do these, as you can see from those pictures. Yeah. Those weren't exactly lovely boulevards.
Can you explain, too, how it's collected? Because we're not even involved in collecting it.
Mayor and Council, yes, it's essentially collected, I believe, right from Excel. And Excel then also does bill back at these rates to the properties, and that's how they get the money back from the residents.
Thank you. They're really it's a pass-through kind of a relationship that we have. And I can tell the two new council members, too, when we adopted this gas franchise fee, what we did was we reviewed what other cities were charging, and we are much less than what many cities are charging. But what it does for our cities is it gives us this nice tool where we can achieve more of these road projects without increasing our debt. And like City Manager Coleman said, it spreads it out amongst all of our residents who are using, and businesses who are using our streets. So it was a win-win situation when we adopted it, and we've actually raised it one time as well. But still, in order to do that, we also reviewed what all the other cities were doing, and we still are very reasonable in terms of, there are many cities that charge more than us, and there are some obviously that maybe charge less, but we felt very comfortable with the reasonable amount. So, thank you very much.
Mayor, I'd move to approve the resolution accepting the feasibility report authorizing the preparation of plans and specifications and calling for a public hearing at 7 p.m. on March 11th, 2019 for the Mayland Crestview Forest Area Pavement Rehabilitation City Project 1827.
Second.
Moved by Smith, seconded by Juniman, to approve the resolution accepting the feasibility report, authorizing the preparation plans and specifications, and calling for a public hearing on March 11th, 2019 for the Mayland Crestview Forest Area Pavement Rehabilitation City Project 18-27. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Ayes have it. Motion passes. And with that, council, we have nothing else on our agenda. Thank you all. We will adjourn the meeting, and it is about 8 minutes to 9.